The diesel generators roar 24 hours a day, burning through 1 ton of fuel every single day, just to keep the air conditioning running. It's March 2022, and the Eclipse sits anchored in Marmaris Marina on Turkey's South Aegean coast. A 533-foot monument to excess that's become a symbol of something far more complicated than luxury. Inside this floating palace, the air stays at a perfect 72 degrees to protect art worth millions and custom furnishings that took years to create. The mold can't be allowed to creep in. The humidity must stay controlled. And so the generators churn, day after day, month after month, at a cost of $3,000 per day just for the marina slip, while Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich plays a high-stakes game of chess with Western governments over $2.5 billion in frozen Chelsea Football Club proceeds. This wasn't how things were supposed to end for the man who once owned the world's largest private yacht. The story really begins on a freezing Siberian night in 1970, when 3-year-old Roman Arkadievich Abramovich lost his father in a construction accident. His mother had died when he was just 1 year old. The orphaned boy was shuttled between relatives in Komi Republic, one of Russia's bleakest regions, where gray clouds and harsh elements reign supreme and opportunity seems as distant as Moscow itself. He was, by all accounts, an average student who dropped out of 2 colleges. But Roman Abramovich possessed something that couldn't be taught in Soviet classrooms. He had an instinct for survival and an eye for opportunity that would transform him from a young man selling stolen gasoline to army officers during his military service into one of the richest men on the planet. When Soviet Premier Mikhail Gorbachev began loosening the shackles of privatization in the late 1980s, Abramovich was ready. He and his first wife Olga set up a company making dolls, selling them from their Moscow apartment. It was small-time stuff, but it was legal, and it was just the beginning. The real fortune came in the chaos of the 1990s. During Russia's controversial loans for shares privatization program. This was when state-owned assets were transferred to private hands at prices far below market value, creating a new class of oligarchs virtually overnight. Abramovich's breakthrough came through his relationship with Boris Berezovsky, an already powerful businessman who ran a nationwide car dealership and was a key member of President Boris Yeltsin's inner circle. Through Berezovsky, Abramovich gained access to the corridors of power. Together they founded the offshore company Runicom Limited, registered in Gibraltar. In 1995, Abramovich acquired a controlling stake in Sibneft, a major Russian oil company, through what many observers described as a rigged auction. That single acquisition became the cornerstone of his fortune. By 2005, when he sold his 75.7% stake in Sibneft to state-owned gas giant Gazprom for $13 billion, Abramovich had transformed himself from a street trader into one of the world's wealthiest men. Forbes estimated his net worth at $14.5 billion in 2021, making him the 2nd richest person in Israel and the 11th richest in Russia. But money alone doesn't make you famous. What catapulted Abramovich into global consciousness was his 2003 purchase of Chelsea Football Club for £140 million. The London team was on the brink of bankruptcy. Under Abramovich's ownership, Chelsea became a powerhouse, winning 5 Premier League titles, 2 UEFA Champions Leagues, and 21 major trophies in total. He invested more than £2 billion on new players, fundamentally distorting the transfer market and earning the club the derisive nickname Chelsea. Critics accused him of purchasing trophies with his personal wealth, but Chelsea fans didn't care. They had found their savior, even if he lived a life most couldn't begin to imagine. And that life included a fleet of luxury assets that would make most billionaires blush. There was the $80 million private jet with gold fittings, a banquet hall, and its own anti-missile system. There were multiple homes around the world, including a £125 million mansion in London's Kensington Palace Gardens, often called Billionaire's Row. And then there were the yachts. Abramovich didn't just own yachts. He collected them the way other people collect cars. There was Le Grand Bleu, Polaris, Sussurro, and Eclipse. Each one was larger and more impressive than the last. But none of them could compare to what he commissioned in February 2005. The order was placed with Blohm and Voss, the legendary German shipbuilding company based in Hamburg. The project was codenamed Luxury Yacht M147, and construction began in total secrecy. The keel was laid on August 29, 2006. What Abramovich had in mind wasn't just a yacht. It was a statement. It was a fortress. It was a floating city that would become the largest privately owned yacht in the world, a record it would hold until 2013, when the Azam was delivered to UAE President Khalifa bin Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan. The specifications alone were staggering. When complete, Eclipse would measure 162.5 meters in length and 22 meters in beam, with a draft of 5.9 meters and a gross tonnage of 13,000 tons. The steel hull and aluminum superstructure required 5 years of intensive design, development, and construction. Abramovich hired Terence Disdale Design, the London-based firm responsible for some of the world's most luxurious yacht interiors, to handle everything from the superstructure design to deck layouts to interior construction supervision. Disdale, who had already designed interiors for Abramovich's previous yacht Polaris, was given what he described as a fairly free hand to translate the owner's requirements into reality. The exterior was designed to be graceful but imposing, with harmonious balance between interior and exterior spaces. The 22-meter beam provided high overheads more typical of great houses than yachts. Unique halfway landings on exterior staircases added distinctive charm and character. Every single element was considered. The positioning of windows was determined by what went on within. The dining room window lined up with the center of the dining table. Nothing was designed on a whim. Initial cost estimates put the project at $500 million. Those estimates proved laughably low. As construction progressed, Abramovich made regular trips to Hamburg to oversee the work and demand modifications. The submarine hangar needed to be more sophisticated. The helicopter storage had to accommodate not just 2 but 3 aircraft. The security systems required constant upgrades. By the time Eclipse was launched on June 12, 2009, the price tag had ballooned. Some sources claimed €340 million, roughly $550 million. Others insisted it was closer to €800 million or $1.2 billion. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. But what's certain is that Eclipse cost more than most countries' annual defense budgets. And Abramovich was just getting started with modifications. After her launch, Eclipse sailed to Frederikshavn, Denmark, for sea trials in September 2009. The first pictures of the completed yacht were taken in Kristiansand, Norway, during a refueling stop in May 2010. She was finally delivered to Abramovich on December 9, 2010, more than 5 years after the initial order. The yacht that emerged from Blohm and Voss was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Eclipse was divided into 9 decks, each serving specific purposes. The top deck housed 2 helicopter pads and a helicopter hangar capable of storing 3 aircraft total. Level 8 featured a 16-meter swimming pool whose bottom could be raised hydraulically to transform the entire area into a dance floor, plus extensive sundeck space. Level 7 contained another smaller pool, an atrium, and open deck areas. The sixth level was home to the main salon, the primary dining hall that could seat dozens, and a 40-foot by 60-foot full-beam loggia with retractable glass panels for open-air dining. The fifth level contained the master's suite, a sprawling 5,000-square-foot domain that occupied most of the deck. Inside was a grand piano, an actual stage for entertainment, furniture custom-made specifically for this vessel, and a roof that could be completely removed for stargazing. The fourth level served as the main entrance. Level 3 was divided between guest cabins and crew quarters, with a central foyer separating them. The second deck featured something truly unusual, a docking port for the submarine with internal boarding access so passengers never had to go outside. And Level 1 held the engine room, all the machinery required to run this floating city, and a small disco club. The guest accommodations were designed to host 36 people across 18 cabins. Each cabin came with its own massive television screen, personal jacuzzi, and furnishings that showcased opulent materials like black wood with silver rubbed into the open grain, limed weng, and buffalo hide. But it was the crew requirements that really demonstrated Eclipse's scale. 70 crew members were needed just to keep the yacht operational. That didn't include security personnel, which Abramovich maintained separately. The crew had their own dedicated cinema in the bow of the yacht, their own dining facilities, and 35 separate cabins. There were 2 staff cabins on the owner's deck alone, positioned to provide immediate service. The annual cost of maintaining Eclipse was estimated at $50 to $60 million. That included crew salaries, which for 70 highly trained personnel could easily run into millions. There were mechanical maintenance costs for the 4 MTU-20V 1163 TB93 diesel engines, each a masterpiece of German engineering. The stabilization system, critical for comfort in rough seas, required constant attention. The technological equipment needed regular updates and renewals. And then there was fuel. Eclipse's fuel tanks held 1 million liters of diesel, roughly 264,000 gallons. A complete refueling cost, an estimated $2.2 million. During active cruising, when the yacht reached its top speed of 25 knots or cruised comfortably at 22 knots, fuel consumption was measured in thousands of gallons per day. But even sitting still, Eclipse burned through fuel at an alarming rate. Those generators couldn't stop. The air conditioning couldn't shut down. The security systems required constant power. And speaking of security, this is where Eclipse truly separated itself from every other yacht on the planet. Abramovich was, after all, a Russian oligarch worth billions who'd made enemies during his rise to power. He traveled with what reports described as a 40-man private army of security personnel. The yacht needed to be as secure as a military vessel. It needed to be a fortress that happened to float. The security features installed on Eclipse read like something from a James Bond film. The yacht was equipped with bulletproof glass throughout, protecting against everything from small arms fire to potential attacks from shore. Motion sensors lined the hull, detecting any unauthorized approach. An anti-ballistic missile defense system was installed, capable of detecting incoming threats and deploying countermeasures. Whether this system actually worked or was more theatrical than functional remained classified. But its mere existence sent a message. The yacht featured 3 launch boats for rapid deployment of security personnel or emergency evacuation. There was a 3-person submarine manufactured by U-Boat Works, capable of diving to 50 meters or 160 feet, providing a last resort escape option if everything else failed. And then there was the feature that captured the world's imagination more than any other: the anti-paparazzi laser system. The system was first reported by the Times of London in 2009, and the story spread like wildfire. According to reports, Eclipse was fitted with infrared laser scanners that could detect the electronic light sensors used in digital cameras, known as charge-coupled devices or CCDs. When the system identified a camera pointed at the yacht, it would fire a focused beam of light directly at the lens, completely washing out any photograph being taken. The beams could also be activated manually by security guards if they spotted photographers loitering nearby. Security personnel on the bow were often seen with what appeared to be handheld anti-camera devices. The system allegedly scanned the surrounding area continuously, seeking out any CCD signature. Some reports claimed it could detect cameras even when they weren't using flash, identifying them before the first shot was ever taken. The technology sent bright infrared light that would overwhelm the digital sensor, creating a whiteout effect that rendered photos useless. The existence of the anti-paparazzi system was never officially confirmed by Abramovich or Blom and Voss, and some industry experts expressed skepticism. One mega-yacht industry veteran dismissed the claims, pointing out that lasers powerful enough to disrupt cameras at significant distances would likely blind photographers, which would trigger immediate legal action. Another photographer consulted experts who concluded that even if the system existed, it probably wouldn't work on most professional digital SLR cameras or any film cameras. But whether the system truly functioned as advertised or was partly myth, it didn't matter. The story captured the public's fascination with Abramovich's obsessive pursuit of privacy. Here was a man who'd spent somewhere between $500 million and $1.2 billion on a yacht, and he was so determined to avoid paparazzi that he'd installed lasers. In 2018, that system, or something like it, apparently worked. DroneWorks Studios co-founder Justin Oakes attempted to film Eclipse using a drone. As he maneuvered for shots, something disrupted his controls. He lost visual feed from the drone's camera. He observed several people on the yacht's bow, one apparently wielding an anti-drone device. Despite the interference, Oakes managed to regain limited control and quickly activated the drone's sport mode to retreat, though he still lacked camera feed. The encounter underscored the sophisticated security measures that wealthy individuals increasingly employed to protect their privacy. But the most remarkable aspect of Eclipse wasn't the security or the size or even the cost. It was the sheer accumulation of luxury features that seemed almost absurd in their excess. The 16-meter swimming pool on the main deck didn't just hold water. It featured retract-able glass panels for open-air swimming and a blue granite floor. At the touch of a button, the entire pool bottom could rise hydraulically, draining the water and transforming the space into a dance floor large enough for dozens of guests. Abramovich reportedly spent $80,000 just on the marble bathtub in one of the suites. Gold-plated fixtures weren't limited to bathrooms, but appeared throughout the yacht. There was a beauty salon with equipment imported from Paris. A casino featured custom gaming tables. The library contained rare books and first editions. An aquarium built into one wall displayed tropical fish that required a dedicated crew member just to maintain proper water chemistry. The exterior fireplace on one of the decks was surrounded by seating areas where guests could gather on cool evenings. Internal lifts connected the decks, eliminating the need to climb stairs. The salon featured a home theater system with a screen so large and projection equipment so sophisticated that it rivaled commercial cinemas. The owner's deck stretched 56 meters, longer than many entire yachts. This was Abramovich's private domain, accessible only to family and the most trusted associates. The master suite's 5,000 square feet included not just sleeping quarters, but an office, private lounges, and entertainment spaces. The bedroom alone was larger than most luxury apartments. Custom artwork commissioned specifically for Eclipse decorated the walls. Sculptures by renowned artists occupied alcoves. The attention to detail extended to elements most people would never notice. Every door handle, every light switch, every piece of hardware was custom designed. Terence Disdale insisted on hundreds of custom finishes developed exclusively for this project. The upholstery and furniture followed a beige and cream color palette with wooden accents, creating an atmosphere of understated elegance rather than gaudy display of wealth. The goal was timeless class, not fleeting style, and it worked. In 2011, Eclipse was selected as Motor Yacht of the Year at the World Superyacht Awards. In 2015, she received an even more prestigious honor, Motor Yacht of the Decade, the highest accolade ever awarded to a yacht design. For the first few years after delivery, Eclipse lived the life she was designed for. Every winter, she traveled to St. Martin in the Caribbean to pick up guests who flew into the island's airport. From there, she sailed to Abramovich's home on nearby St. Barthélemy, known as St. Bart's, the playground of the ultra-wealthy, where Russian oligarchs mingled with Hollywood stars and European royalty. The yacht's 6,000 nautical mile range at cruising speed meant she could traverse the Atlantic without refueling. Abramovich hosted parties on board, though details of these gatherings remained closely guarded. He was photographed with his girlfriend, Daria Zhukova, a Russian art collector and socialite, enjoying the sun decks. Chelsea Football Club players were occasionally spotted boarding the yacht during team trips. But mostly, Eclipse remained a mystery, a floating enigma that appeared in exotic ports and then vanished again. In 2015, Eclipse underwent a major refit at the Blom & Voss yard in Hamburg, the same facility where she'd been built. The work took several months and reportedly cost tens of millions of dollars. Updated technology was installed. Interiors were refreshed. New security systems were integrated. She emerged looking as impressive as the day she was delivered. For a brief period in 2011, Eclipse was actually made available for charter through Superyachts Monaco, a Monaco-based yacht brokerage company. The charter rate was never publicly disclosed, but industry experts estimated it would have been at least $3 million per week, possibly much more. Similar-sized yachts typically chartered for $4 to $5 million per week. One report claimed Abramovich charged £175,000 per day, which would work out to over £1 million per week. But the charter availability was short-lived. Abramovich apparently decided he preferred to keep Eclipse for private use only. The operational costs never stopped mounting. The monthly electricity bill alone was estimated at $47,000. Insurance for a vessel this valuable and complex ran into millions annually. The yacht required constant maintenance. Teak decks needed regular care. Paint and varnish required touch-ups. Electronic systems had to be updated as technology evolved. The submarine required inspection and servicing by specialized technicians. The helicopters needed maintenance that matched aviation industry standards. One of the 3 helicopters stored in the hangar required an entire crew of mechanics. The pools needed chemical balancing and filtration system maintenance. The stabilization system, critical for preventing seasickness, used sophisticated gyroscopes and computerized controls that required expert attention. Every system had backups, and every backup had redundancies. Nothing could fail. Not when you were responsible for 36 guests and 70 crew members on a vessel worth close to $1 billion. Abramovich's other yachts paled by comparison, but he kept them. He owned Solaris, a $610 million mega yacht delivered in 2021 by Lloyd Werft that was almost as impressive as Eclipse. The 140-meter vessel featured similar security systems, including radar-controlled missile detection, bulletproof windows, and armored protection. Some speculated that Abramovich kept multiple yachts partially for security reasons, ensuring he always had a means of escaping if one location became compromised. Others suggested it was simply the compulsive collecting of someone with effectively unlimited resources. By 2018, Abramovich's net worth had grown to $11.5 billion, making him the richest person in Israel, where he'd obtained citizenship. He split time between London, Moscow, Israel, and his Caribbean properties, using Eclipse and his other yachts as mobile bases that could relocate on short notice. But the world was changing. Political tensions between Russia and the West were escalating. Abramovich's close relationship with Vladimir Putin, which he consistently denied, but which Western intelligence agencies considered proven, was becoming increasingly problematic. The UK government and others viewed Russian oligarchs as extensions of the Kremlin, using their wealth to exert influence abroad while supporting Putin's increasingly aggressive foreign policy. Then came February 24, 2022. Russian forces invaded Ukraine in what Moscow called a special military operation, but what the rest of the world recognized as an illegal war of aggression. The response was swift and brutal. Western governments imposed the most severe sanctions on Russia since the Cold War. And Russian oligarchs, particularly those with ties to Putin, found themselves in the crosshairs. On March 10, 2022, the UK government officially sanctioned Roman Abramovich, freezing his assets and banning him from entering the country. The European Union followed suit. Canada, Australia, Switzerland, and New Zealand added his name to their sanctions lists. The stated reason was his alleged close ties to the Kremlin and Putin. Abramovich's entire UK-based empire was suddenly in jeopardy. His London properties were frozen. His private jet couldn't land in Western countries. And Chelsea Football Club, his beloved trophy asset, became a massive liability. Under the terms of sanctions, Abramovich couldn't profit from any UK-based assets. But he also couldn't simply abandon Chelsea. The club had ongoing obligations, player contracts, stadium maintenance, everything required to keep a Premier League team operational. The UK government issued a special license, allowing the club to continue operations while a sale was arranged. But the terms were harsh. Abramovich would not be allowed to profit personally from the sale. The proceeds would be frozen. In May 2022, Chelsea Football Club was sold to a consortium led by U.S. investor Todd Bailey and private equity firm Clear Lake Capital for £2.5 billion, approximately $3.3 billion. It was one of the most expensive sports team sales in history. But Abramovich never saw a penny. The money was immediately frozen in a UK bank account, held by the Office of Financial Sanctions Implementation. According to the terms of the government license, the proceeds had to be donated to humanitarian causes related to the war in Ukraine. Abramovich's representatives insisted the money should go to all victims of the war, including those outside Ukraine. The UK government insisted it must go specifically to humanitarian efforts inside Ukraine. Neither side would budge. As of December 2025, more than 2.5 years after the sale, the £2.5 billion remained frozen. The British government, now led by Prime Minister Keir Starmer, gave Abramovich a final 90-day ultimatum: agree to donate the funds to Ukraine humanitarian causes or face court action to force compliance. But that confrontation lay in the future. Back in March 2022, as sanctions closed in, Abramovich faced an immediate problem. Where could he keep his yachts? Eclipse and Solaris were both in European waters, and Western governments were actively hunting for Russian-owned superyachts to seize. Italy had already grabbed several. France impounded another. Spain seized one. The yachts were being held as leverage, frozen assets that could potentially be sold to fund Ukrainian relief efforts. Abramovich needed a safe harbor, and fast. Eclipse was already moving. Using a combination of crew intelligence, legal advisors, and political connections, the yacht fled European waters in the early days of March 2022. She sailed at top speed, burning through fuel at an incredible rate, racing to reach safety before authorities could act. The destination was Turkey. Turkey had refused to join Western sanctions against Russia. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan maintained a pragmatic relationship with Putin, balancing between NATO membership and economic ties to Russia. Turkey's position made it a perfect sanctuary for sanctioned oligarchs. On March 22, 2022, Eclipse arrived in Marmaris Marina on Turkey's South Aegean coast. She dropped anchor and hasn't left since. Solaris followed shortly after, settling into Bodrum, another Turkish resort town about 60 kilometers away. For Abramovich, the Turkish coast represented safety. For Turkey, the presence of these mega yachts represented prestige and revenue. For Western governments, it represented the limits of sanctions enforcement. The yachts were safe, but they were also trapped. And that's where things got expensive in a whole new way. Maintaining Eclipse while actively cruising cost tens of millions per year. Maintaining her while sitting still at anchor somehow cost even more. The marina fees in Marmaris were estimated at 100,000 Turkish lira per night, roughly $3,000. That alone added up to more than $1 million annually just for the slip. But the real costs came from keeping the yacht operational while stationary. Every system had to remain active. The generators couldn't shut down. The reason was mold and humidity. A yacht of Eclipse's size, with its extensive wood finishes, custom fabrics, leather furnishings, and multi-million-dollar art collection, was incredibly vulnerable to moisture damage. Sea mist carries salt that corrodes metal fixtures. Humidity breeds mold that destroys fabrics and leather. Temperature fluctuations can crack wood finishes and damage paint. The only solution was to keep the air conditioning running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, maintaining a constant 72-degree environment with carefully controlled humidity levels. The fuel consumption was staggering. Eclipse burned through 1 ton of diesel every single day, just running her generators for air conditioning and essential systems. That's 2,000 pounds of fuel daily. A metric ton, 365 tons annually. At 2022 fuel prices, that worked out to over $1 million per year in fuel costs just to sit still. The mooring fees added another $1 million. Insurance remained at pre-sanctions levels, probably $5 to $10 million annually. The 70 crew members still needed to be paid, fed, and housed. Even with the yacht stationary, they maintained constant watches, performed maintenance, kept systems operational. Crew salaries and related costs likely exceeded $10 million per year. Then there were parts, supplies, technological updates, security costs, legal fees, and endless other expenses. Conservative estimates put the annual cost of keeping Eclipse operational while anchored at Marmaris at $40 to $50 million. Some industry experts suggested the real number was closer to $60 million. For a man whose assets were largely frozen and whose wealth had dropped from $14.5 billion in 2021 to $9.2 billion in 2023, these costs were no longer trivial. Abramovich reportedly spent much of his time shuttling between Moscow, Istanbul, and Tel Aviv, the 3 cities where he could move freely. He'd obtained Israeli citizenship earlier in his career and was safe there from sanctions. Russia obviously welcomed him. Turkey provided a neutral ground. But he couldn't visit his London properties. He couldn't travel to most European countries or North America. His movements were restricted to a shrinking portion of the globe. And his beloved Eclipse sat in Turkish waters, burning through fuel and money, a monument to a different era. The environmental impact of Eclipse's forced Turkish retirement drew criticism. Environmental groups pointed out that burning 1 ton of fuel daily just for air conditioning was unconscionable in an era of climate change. The continuous operation of diesel generators contributed to air and noise pollution in Marmaris, a popular tourist destination trying to market itself as an eco-conscious resort area. Local residents complained about the constant hum of Eclipse's generators, audible from shore on quiet nights. Turkish officials defended the yacht's presence, noting it brought prestige and revenue to the marina and local economy. But the criticism continued. Here was a vessel consuming more fuel sitting still than most homes use in a year, all to protect luxury furnishings and artwork owned by a Billionaire. Sanctioned oligarch. Yet there was no denying Eclipse remained an engineering marvel. The 4 MTU engines, each producing thousands of horsepower, were maintained to perfection. The rotor-based stabilization system continued functioning flawlessly, keeping the yacht steady even during storms. The helicopter pads could still deploy for operations within minutes. The submarine remained fully operational, though it never left its hangar. The swimming pool could still transform into a dance floor. The anti-paparazzi lasers, whatever their true capabilities, remained active. The missile defense system stood ready, though hopefully it would never be needed. Eclipse represented the absolute pinnacle of early 21st century yacht engineering. She incorporated technologies that simply didn't exist a decade earlier. The diesel-electric propulsion system with rotating azipod drives was more efficient than traditional shaft systems. The hybrid approach allowed for quieter operation and better fuel economy at cruising speeds. The stabilization technology minimized roll motion to levels that made seasickness almost impossible. The submarine, manufactured by U-Boat Works, was a masterpiece of miniaturization. The 3-person vessel could dive to 50 meters, stay submerged for hours, and provide panoramic views through its acrylic spheres. The acrylic material had the same refractive index as seawater, meaning it visually disappeared underwater, creating an illusion of floating in open ocean. Internal climate control kept passengers comfortable at any depth. A surround sound music system provided entertainment. The submarine featured guest-focused boarding structures that made entry and exit surprisingly easy. And its internal hangar meant passengers could board without ever going outside, maintaining complete privacy. When would anyone ever use this submarine for a genuine emergency escape? Probably never. But its existence demonstrated Abramovich's approach to yacht ownership. Every possible contingency must be prepared for. Every conceivable luxury must be available. Cost was irrelevant. Only capability mattered. The same philosophy applied to the helicopter facilities. Why did one person need 3 helicopters? The practical answer was redundancy and variety. Different helicopters served different purposes. One might be optimized for long-range transport. Another could carry more passengers. A third might specialize in quick flights from yacht to shore. But the real answer was simpler. Because he could. Because when you've spent $500 million to over $1 billion on a yacht, adding helicopters barely registers. Eclipse could accommodate 2 on the landing pad simultaneously, with a third stored in the hangar below the foredeck. All the pilots, mechanics, and support staff needed to maintain 3 aircraft were additional crew beyond the 70 required for the yacht itself. The logistics of operating a private helicopter fleet from a moving vessel were mind-boggling. Fuel had to be stored in explosion-proof tanks. Maintenance required certified aviation mechanics. Flight operations needed coordination with local air traffic control wherever the yacht traveled. Insurance for helicopter operations was separate from yacht insurance and cost millions annually. But perhaps the most telling aspect of Eclipse was what happened to her reputation after sanctions hit. Before 2022, Eclipse was viewed as an amazing achievement, a testament to human engineering and design capability. Yachting magazines celebrated her innovations. Industry awards recognized her excellence. Even people who couldn't imagine such wealth admired the craftsmanship and technology. After 2022, Eclipse became something else, a symbol of oligarch excess, a floating fortress that protected ill-gotten gains, a reminder of the dark side of Russia's post-Soviet transition. The exact same yacht, with the exact same features, was now viewed through a completely different lens. The anti-paparazzi lasers that once seemed like clever privacy measures now appeared sinister. The security systems that once impressed with their sophistication now looked like oligarch paranoia. The sheer size and cost that once awed observers now provoked anger at such excess, while Russia waged war on Ukraine. The human cost of sanctions extended beyond Abramovich. Eclipse's 70 crew members, many of whom had worked on the yacht since her delivery, found their careers in limbo. They continued receiving paychecks, but the yacht never moved. There were no voyages to exotic destinations, no challenging navigation operations, no opportunities to demonstrate their skills. They maintained a stationary vessel in perfect condition for an owner who rarely visited. Several crew members quietly departed over the years, finding positions on yachts that actually sailed. Those who remained did so partly out of loyalty, partly because the pay was excellent, and partly because working on Eclipse, even anchored, carried prestige in the yachting world. The captain, whose identity was never publicly confirmed, faced unique challenges. He commanded the world's third-largest yacht by length, yet she never left port. He maintained readiness to sail on 12 hours' notice, but that order never came. He oversaw complex systems, managed a large crew, and ensured the yacht remained in perfect condition, all while anchored in the same slip month after month, year after year. The yacht's registration offered another layer of complexity. Eclipse flew the flag of the Cook Islands, a small Pacific nation popular for yacht registration, due to favorable tax treatment and privacy protections. The actual ownership structure ran through multiple offshore entities. Abramovich used shell companies registered in Cyprus, Gibraltar, and other offshore jurisdictions to hold title to Eclipse and his other assets. This structure, revealed in the Cyprus Confidential leak, showed the vast scale of Abramovich's offshore operation. One particularly interesting discovery from leaked documents was a 2010 deal where Abramovich apparently handed a secret stake in a major Russian advertising company to two of Putin's close friends, including Sergei Roldugin, known as Putin's wallet. The $40 million deal represented the clearest paper trail yet, showing a potential financial link between Abramovich and Putin. Abramovich had always denied any financial relationship with the Russian president, but the documentary evidence suggested otherwise. The question of Eclipse's ultimate fate remained unanswered as of December 2025. Would she ever sail again? Would sanctions eventually lift, allowing Abramovich to resume his globe-trotting lifestyle? Or would Eclipse remain trapped in Turkish waters, burning fuel and money, while her owner aged and circumstances changed? Some industry observers speculated that Abramovich might eventually sell Eclipse, possibly to another Russian oligarch not yet sanctioned, or to a buyer from a non-Western country like China or Saudi Arabia. But finding a buyer for a yacht this expensive and complex, with such baggage attached, would be nearly impossible. The yacht was too famous, too controversial, too connected to one man's rise and fall. Others suggested Eclipse might eventually be seized despite Turkey's current protection. If Erdogan's political calculus changed, if Turkey needed to improve relations with the West. The yacht could be offered as a bargaining chip. Western governments had made clear they wanted Russian oligarch assets liquidated to fund Ukraine reconstruction. A yacht worth between $500 million and $1.2 billion would make a significant contribution. But actually, seizing Eclipse would be complicated. She was registered in the Cook Islands, not Turkey. Her ownership structure ran through multiple jurisdictions. Legal battles could last years, and Abramovich had proven adept at using offshore structures and legal maneuvers to protect his assets. The most likely scenario was simply more of the same. Eclipse would remain in Marmaris, generators running, air conditioning humming, crew maintaining her in perfect condition, while Abramovich waited for the geopolitical situation to shift. He was only 59 years old as of 2025. He'd survived the chaotic 90s, outmaneuvered rivals, maintained favor with Putin through multiple regime challenges, and built a fortune that survived multiple market crashes. He was patient. He was strategic. And he understood that in Russia, political winds could shift dramatically and quickly. What seemed impossible today might become reality tomorrow. In the meantime, Eclipse served as an unintended museum to a very specific moment in history. She represented the peak of oligarch wealth in the early 21st century, when Russian billionaires seemed untouchable, when money could buy almost anything, when yachts grew larger each year in an arms race of luxury. That era ended on February 24th, 2022. Eclipse survived, but she was frozen in time, trapped in Turkish waters. A 533-foot reminder that no amount of money can fully insulate you from geopolitical reality. The anti-paparazzi lasers, if they ever truly worked, couldn't ward off the attention that mattered most: government scrutiny. The missile defense system couldn't protect against economic sanctions. The submarine offered no escape from frozen bank accounts. All the security features, all the redundant systems, all the careful planning had prepared Eclipse for physical threats. But the threat that finally trapped her was legal, financial, and diplomatic. It was a threat that couldn't be detected by motion sensors or deterred by bulletproof glass. And yet, even trapped, Eclipse remained extraordinary. Walk along the Marmaris waterfront today, and you'll see her, gleaming white against the blue Turkish waters, pristine and perfect despite years of stationary existence. Tourists snap photos from shore. Local boat operators offer close-up viewing tours, sailing small vessels as near as they dare before security staff politely wave them off. The yacht dominates the marina, dwarfing every other vessel. At night, subtle exterior lighting illuminates her superstructure, creating an almost ethereal glow. It's easy to forget, looking at her from shore, that this beautiful vessel has become a very expensive prison. The final irony of Eclipse is this: Abramovich spent somewhere between $500 million and over $1 billion to create the ultimate expression of freedom. A yacht allows its owner to go anywhere on Earth without passing through borders or airports. It provides total independence, complete autonomy. No visas required, no customs inspections. No government can tell you where you can or can't go when you're in international waters. Except they can. Because a yacht needs ports, it needs fuel, it needs supplies. And when every friendly port is suddenly hostile, when every fuel depot is in a sanctioned country, when every marina is under Western influence, that freedom evaporates. Eclipse became a gilded cage, her mobility irrelevant when she had nowhere to go. Roman Abramovich's journey from Siberian orphan to London sports club owner to sanctioned oligarch tells a uniquely Russian story. It's a story of survival and ambition, of navigating chaotic transitions, of leveraging relationships with power. Eclipse was supposed to be his ultimate achievement, a floating testament to what money and determination could create. Instead, she became his burden, consuming tens of millions annually while providing none of the freedom she was designed to deliver. The yacht that was meant to go anywhere now goes nowhere. The fortress built to protect privacy now attracts constant attention. The achievement that won Motor Yacht of the Decade became a symbol of an era ending. As December 2025 approaches its end and the yacht prepares for her fourth consecutive winter in Turkish waters, the generators continue their eternal hum. The air conditioning preserves the custom furnishings and priceless art. The crew maintains every system in perfect working order, ready to sail within hours if that order ever comes. The submarine sits unused in its hangar. The helicopters remain grounded. The pool stays empty. And somewhere, perhaps in Tel Aviv or Moscow or Istanbul, Roman Abramovich makes another calculation about when circumstances might shift enough to allow his beloved yacht to finally sail again. For now, Eclipse waits, burning 1 ton of fuel per day, costing $40 to $60 million per year, a 533-foot monument to the reality that even the world's most sophisticated superyacht cannot escape the reach of geopolitics.